welcome to day 4 of
31 Wild Halloween Review Nights.
We are continuing our discussion on the Universal monster films from the early days of cinema. So far we've talked about Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, and today we're going to talk about probably one of my favorite ones so far, The Invisible Man. Released in 1933, a story originally by H.G. Wells, this horror tale focuses on a scientist named Dr. Jack Griffin, who's created a serum that turns him invisible. Though while trying to figure out how to make himself visible again, he gets away from everybody in his life and makes his way over to a small little inn, looking very suspicious as he's covered in a long coat and bandages. Though while trying to put together a serum to make himself visible again, a few disturbances cause him to mess up, and he grows angry and murderously insane, causing terror around the town and becoming a wanted creature. Oh boy, did I have fun with this one. Out of all the films that I've seen, I found this one to be the most amusing. I thought it was funny. It was really the only one that I've laughed really hard at so far, just because of how goofy and also just how simple it is. Like, you don't need the makeup, the fancy costume to make this monster, because the monster is literally invisible. In fact, this guy isn't even a monster. The Invisible Man is an invisible man. It was a lab experiment gone wrong, and the guy is just trying to fix himself, but the serum has done something to his mental state, and now he's just a guy on a murder street, causing trouble, and he's invisible. The second that Jack walked into the inn in the beginning, covered in bandages and those cool goggles and the long coat, it already gave off a creepy vibe to it. And this film, while it didn't scare me, it definitely had the creepy elements in it. That's the one thing that all these films have done so far. They haven't been scary for me, but they've been creepy. Creepy, yet entertaining. Something else I really, really like about this story is Jack is already invisible when we see him. Like, you can kind of assume that because of the way that he walks into the inn covered in bandages, but the next few scenes that we see him when he's in his room, you know, somebody walks in and then he quickly hides his mouth, and that quickly told me this guy's already invisible. I thought the way that this would go down is we would see him make the serum, he'd turn himself invisible, he would have fun being invisible, try to turn himself back to normal, and then slowly goes insane. No, that doesn't happen. We come into the story as he's already invisible, which is fantastic. It's also very different because the last 3 films that we've seen, we start where the story is starting. Renfield and Dracula, he goes to the castle, introduces himself to Dracula, and then that's when trouble starts. In Frankenstein, we see him building the monster. In the Wolfman, we see him get bit. Well, we don't see him get bit, but we start with his story with him eventually leading to him getting bit, and then we see his transformation. This one, the story has already started for us. Our job as the audience in the beginning to kind of put the pieces together and understand what exactly happened based on the information that we already have, but eventually it does get revealed to us, and that's what makes it a little more entertaining. And going back on what I said about it being creepy, this guy is insane, and this is what I love about him. Jack Griffin is insane, and it's beautiful. The guy's laugh in this film as he's running around all invisible and all you see is his pants. It's amazing, it's creepy, and I love it. And the special effects in this film, how they managed to make his footsteps appear in the snow and all the things levitating. There's literally one scene that Jack obviously gets the attention of the police, and one of the officers, as they try to catch him, there's a scene where the cop, he's being dragged by his feet, and then he's thrown in the air, and now he's just swinging around. I tried looking for the string, because sometimes in these films you can definitely see like maybe a shadow of the string, or maybe just like an inch of it, but I couldn't see anything. So they did a really good job doing the effects in this film. There's also a scene where they're in a bar, and Jack is throwing all the glasses, and just seeing everybody being chaotic and scared, that's funny. I know it's horrible, but it's funny. I found it very amusing. I was amused by this film, and I think I'll say it again, I love it! I think something else that I really, really enjoy about this film is not only the fact that it is a simple idea, but it's also a freaky idea. I mean, this kind of combines my comments of it being very simple and creepy, and kind of relates them to one big comment that it is pretty terrifying. Like, as much as you can look at the Invisible Man and say, well, he's not really scary. He's just an ordinary guy who turned himself invisible. that is probably the worst monster you could probably deal with, even though he's not a monster. The Invisible Man, while even though he is just an ordinary man, he's a brilliant scientist who's lost his mind, and you can't see him. He could be anywhere and can kill you, and you don't see it coming. I mean, that's pretty freaky. That can be pretty terrifying, and that's where the horror in this film would come from. There's a character, Dr. Arthur Kemp, and he is basically being held hostage by Jack Griffo in this film. He's kind of being the assistant to help out Jack, so this way he can get everything together. After Kemp kind of reports Jack to the police saying, "Oh, I got the Invisible Man, he's here." Jack is about to make his escape out the window, but threatens Kemp, saying that at 10 o'clock he will die. And that's later brought up by another scene where Kemp is talking, and we see Kemp very paranoid because they are dealing with a monster that they don't know how to fully control. It's invisible, he could be anywhere, he could be very silent and you'll never know where he is. He could have been in the exact same room as all of them, and it was at that moment where I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. This is a freaky guy who could just do whatever he wants and you won't see it coming. There were even times in this film where the character was there, but you didn't know it until after everybody else left. The final thing I'd like to say about this film is the ending. Just like all the other monster films we've seen so far, Jack does unfortunately die. It's snowing, Jack is in a barn, he's reported to be in a barn, the cops set the barn on fire, he walks out, they see his footsteps, and they shoot him, and he goes down. Unfortunately, the wound is too much for the doctors to fix up. It apparently went through the lungs, they can't repair it. And Jack, unfortunately, passes away with his fiancée and friend by his side. And something that I really liked about this film, and that they did it in such a subtle way, and probably the perfect way that they could in this film, is they showed his face. I kind of figured the ending, only because that's kind of what this was leading up to. All he wanted to do was just get himself back to normal. I just didn't think they would do it in the way that they ended up doing it by killing him. The doctors end up saying that because he's so far gone, he is going to pass, but as he dies, the serum will be wearing off, so that gave us an insight that we are going to see his face, and we do in fact see his face at the end. We first start off with his skull, which is really interesting, but then we actually see his full face, and I'm fine with that. You know, I think that's an interesting way to finally reveal who this invisible guy was, but I liked it. Yeah, it was a quick little thing, they panned away from him, and then that was it, and I found that to be pretty cool. I like this film. If there's any monster film you should definitely check out, it would be The Invisible Man. I've been seeing all these Universal films on YouTube, I've been renting them, so if you'd like to check them out, you should check them out. They're not too much to rent them, they're about $4, or at least at the time making this. It's $4. I don't know if they'd up the price, but if you've never seen The Invisible Man, I would definitely recommend for you to check it out. It is very entertaining. You might have fun with it like I did. With that, that brings us to the end of this monster film. We have one final film that we're going to talk about that's in the Universal lineup. So come back tomorrow and we're sure to unwrap that final film. I made a pun. Thanks for watching The Wild Review on The Wild Review, and you just saw me review a thing!